Imagine for a second that you are sitting in a room and you are just nailing every single question in a high-stakes interview.
Right, you've prepped for weeks.
Exactly. You have the perfect answers, you're projecting total confidence, you're wearing this perfectly tailored outfit. But, the only thing you can actually think about is this shooting, agonizing pain radiating up your calf from your feet.
Oh, that is the worst feeling.
It really is.
Yeah.
Your foundation is literally failing you in real time. So today is Wednesday, July 8th, 2026, and we are looking at what might be the most overlooked tool in your new professional arsenal, your shoes.
Yeah, it's so easily overlooked, right?
Completely. And for those of you listening who are transitioning into or maybe re-entering the professional workforce, this deep dive is engineered specifically for you.
We so often treat professional footwear as just a purely aesthetic choice. Like we think about color matching or just looking the part.
Right. Does this black match that black?
Exactly. But from a purely structural standpoint, your shoes are the primary interface between your body and the concrete world. So we're drawing today from a dedicated workforce development module on footwear alongside a few comprehensive encyclopedias on shoe construction.
And the goal here is to pull out just the actionable stuff.
Yeah, to give you a very specific toolkit.
Mission of this deep dive is to demystify how shoes are actually built and how different styles function. That way, you can walk into literally any office environment feeling capable and, most importantly, physically supported.
Yes, physically supported is key.
But before we even touch on leather types or lacing, we have to establish the guiding principle for today, the golden rule that basically dictates everything in our sources.
And that rule is surprisingly simple. Your feet have to carry you for the rest of your life, which means health and safety will always outrank fashion. Always.
Always. I love that.
I mean, a scuffed or poorly chosen shoe might, visually undermine a great outfit. But a painful, structurally deficient shoe, that undermines your actual physical well-being.
Right. It alters your posture. It drains your energy.
Exactly. And it creates chronic pain that actively distracts you from your work.
You just cannot perform at your professional peak if you are wincing every time you walk down the hall to the conference room. So to avoid that, we really need to understand how to read a shoe before you even buy it.
We're starting from the ground up.
Literally. So if we look at the basic blueprint, any closed shoe is essentially divided into two main architectural zones. You've got the upper, which is everything above the sole that encapsulates the foot, and the bottom, which is the platform beneath it.
Right. And looking at the upper first, the most active component there is called the vamp.
The vamp.
Okay,
Yeah.
the vamp. This is the front and center section covering your toes and the top of your foot. And it is the primary flex point.
So it's where the shoe bends when you walk.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Every single time your foot bends at the ball during a stride, the vamp has to bend with it.
When I've worn really cheap dress shoes in the past, that flex point is usually where the trouble starts.
Oh, I know exactly what you mean.
The material is so stiff that instead of bending smoothly, it creates this sharp crease. And it basically bites down into the top of your foot with every single step.
Yeah, that is exactly what happens with inferior materials. You're essentially experiencing micro-traumas to the top of your foot thousands of times a day.
Ugh, micro traumas. That sounds awful.
It is. So when you're evaluating a shoe for the workplace, you really have to pay attention to the mechanical resistance of that vamp. If it pinches or feels super rigid on your first few steps just walking across a store, I promise you it will be agonizing by 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
Good to know.
Oh.
Okay, so moving forward from the vamp, we hit the toe box. And this feels intrinsically tied to our golden rule about health outranking fashion.
Absolutely.
Because the toe box is that reinforced chander at the very front of the shoe where your toes live. And our sources are totally adamant that the width of this chamber is the single most critical factor for long-term foot health.
It really is. Let's think about this biomechanically. When you put weight on your foot, your toes need to splay.
They need to spread out.
Right. They spread out slightly to absorb the impact and help balance your body. So if you are wearing a shoe with a really narrow, hyper-pointed toe box, you are restricting that natural splay.
You're just cramming them in there.
Yeah, you are literally compressing the metatarsal bones together. And doing that for 40 hours a week invites a whole cascade of structural foot issues. Everything from bunions to serious nerve damage.
Okay, let's unpack this really quick with an analogy because this is so important. If the shoe is a house, the toe box is the living room. You wouldn't want to live in a room where you literally can't wiggle your toes, right?
Yeah, it's a perfect way to look at it. You need breathing room.
So it essentially binds the foot if it's too tight. And to finish off the upper zone, we have the quarters.
Right, the quarters.
These are the side and rear panels that wrap around your heel, and their primary job is lockdown, correct?
Exactly. If the quarters don't securely grip your heel, your foot just slides up and down within the shoe.
Which creates friction.
Friction, which inevitably leads to severe, painful blistering.
Okay, so that's the upper. Now, moving down to the bottom zone, we transition from what we can call the containment system to the suspension system.
I like that, the suspension system.
Because the sole of a well-made shoe is rarely just one single piece of material, right?
No, not at all. It is typically a three-part layered system designed to isolate your foot from the impact of the ground.
So you have the insole, which is what your foot rests directly upon.
Right.
Below that is the midsole, acting as like the primary shock absorber. And finally, you have the outsole, that's the heavy-duty bottom layer that actually grinds against the pavement, along with the heel, which is the block attached at the back.
Spot on.
But the real engineering magic here seems to be in how that upper containment system is actually attached to this bottom suspension system.
Our sources introduce a specific term here that basically dictates the entire lifespan of the shoe.
Ah, yes. The welt.
The welt. The welt is the critical bridge. It is a strip of material, typically a heavy leather, that gets stitched around the outer edge of the shoe. And understanding what the welt does actually takes us right into the great construction divide in the shoe industry.
This is the big one.
It really is. It explains the difference between a shoe that you have to throw away after 6 months and a shoe that can literally last for years.
Okay, let's look at the fast fashion side first. If a listener goes to a typical mall or, a discount department store and buys a standard dress shoe, they're almost certainly buying what the industry calls cemented construction.
Cemented, which is just the technical term for glued.
Glued.
Yeah. In a cemented shoe, the manufacturer bypasses the stitching process entirely. They take the upper and they simply glue it directly to the outsole using heavy industrial adhesives.
And the main advantage here is just cost and weight.
All right. They're incredibly cheap to produce and they're very light on the foot.
But the structural integrity is basically on a ticking clock.
Exactly. From the moment you start walking, the flexing of the shoe, combined with the heat and moisture radiating from your foot, begins degrading that adhesive.
Oh, wow. So just wearing it destroys it.
Yeah, and once the rubber or leather on the outsole wears through from friction against the concrete, the shoe is essentially dead.
Because the sole just begins peeling away.
Mm.
And since there's no structural stitching, there's no welt anchoring the pieces together, a cobbler generally cannot fix it.
No, they can't. You just have to throw it in a landfill and purchase a brand new pair.
Which brings us to the historical gold standard of footwear construction, the Goodyear welt.
Yes. Instead of relying on a chemical adhesive that degrades over time, a Goodyear welted shoe relies on a mechanical bond.
So how does that work exactly?
The shoemaker takes that leather strip, the welt, and physically stitches it to both the upper and the insole. Then, in a totally separate step, they take the heavy outsole and stitch it directly to the welt.
Got it. And because of the way those layers are stacked and stitched, it creates this sort of empty cavity between the inner and outer soles.
Right, a void.
And this cavity is where manufacturers hide what seems to be the secret weapon for long-term comfort.
The cork filler.
Cork.
Yes, in a properly welted shoe, that void is packed with a layer of natural cork. Cork has these brilliant thermal properties, so it insulates your foot against freezing concrete in the winter or hot asphalt in the summer.
Oh, I never even thought about that.
But kinetically, it does something even more impressive.
It compresses.
Yes. Over the first few weeks of wearing the shoe, the heat of your body and the pressure of your stride forces that cork to compress and mold to your exact anatomical footprint.
So it basically creates a custom fit, like a custom orthotic footbed just for you.
Exactly. While the cheap foam inserts in glued shoes simply flatten out and permanently lose their bounce, cork actively adapts. It creates a personalized foundation that supports your unique arch and your specific weight distribution.
Okay, I hear the long-term mathematical argument here, but let's be real for a second.
Okay, lay it on me.
We are talking to listeners who are just entering or re-entering the workforce. They are juggling rent, commuting costs, trying to put together a professional wardrobe from scratch. Telling someone in that financial position to go drop like $250 to $400 on a Goodyear welted shoe feels completely detached from reality.
That is a very fair point.
Right. So what does this all mean for someone just starting out? Are welted shoes really worth it if money is tight? Is this actually practical advice?
It is a vital question, and you're right, the upfront retail cost of a brand new welted shoe is undeniably steep. But the practicality here lies in the secondary market, a market that exists purely because of the economics of reselling.
Okay, walk us through that mechanical process. Why does the welt change the economics so much?
Because a welted shoe is stitched, the outsole is entirely modular, so when you grind through that bottom layer after 2 or 3 years of walking, a cobbler can simply cut the external stitches, peel off the dead outsole, and stitch a brand new one onto the original welt. And the upper, which has already softened and beautifully molded to your ankle, remains completely intact. The cork footbed, which has perfectly memorized your arch, remains intact.
So it is quite literally identical to putting new tires on a car while keeping the chassis.
Precisely. And because these shoes can be rebuilt endlessly, they absolutely flood the secondary market. You can go to a thrift store, a consignment shop, or, an online resale platform and find world-class welted dress shoes for maybe $40 or $50.
That is a game changer.
It is. You take them to a local cobbler for a deep cleaning, some leather conditioning, and maybe a new heel block. And for roughly $80 total, you possess a shoe that will outlast anything sold in a fast fashion mall.
So you're basically leveraging the repairability of the engineering to access premium quality on a super tight budget. That is highly actionable advice. I love that. So assuming we have secured a structurally sound shoe with a healthy toe box, we have to ensure the aesthetic actually fits the professional environment. Let's look at men's styles first and how the anatomy we just covered actually dictates the formality of the shoe.
On the men's side, formality is largely governed by the lacing system. The architecture of the quarters determines whether a shoe is an Oxford or a derby.
Let's examine the Oxford first, which our sources note is frequently referred to as a Balmoral here in the United States. I have always noticed that in highly formal environments like corporate boardrooms or court appearances, there's a very specific, sleek, locked-down look to the footwear.
Yes, and that aesthetic is achieved through closed lacing. If you recall, the quarters are the side panels that come forward to hold the shoelaces. On an Oxford, the bottom edge of those quarters is stitched underneath the vamp.
Okay, so because they are trapped under the front of the shoe, those lace panels have very little horizontal mobility. When you pull the laces tight, the quarters pull together to form a perfectly clean, closed V shape across the top of the foot.
It creates an unbroken, incredibly sleek silhouette. The Oxford is the undisputed standard for conservative business suits and formal interviews. A black Oxford is simply the safest, most rigorous choice you can make in a high-stakes professional setting.
A really helpful way to visualize this closed lacing system is to think of a formal dress shirt.
Oh, yeah.
Here's where it gets really interesting. An Oxford is the footwear equivalent of a buttoned-up suit collar, with a necktie tightly cinched. It is strict, it is contained, and it leaves no room for ambiguity.
I love that comparison.
But if the Oxford is the tightly cinched collar, the derby, which is also known as the blucher, is the equivalent of unbuttoning that top button. It maintains professionalism, but it introduces just a little more breathing room.
And the derby achieves this through open lacing. Instead of trapping the quarters underneath the vamp, a derby features quarters that are stitched on top of the vamp, so they act as two distinct free-moving flaps.
Which fundamentally changes the mechanics of how the shoe actually fits the foot.
It drastically increases adjustability, and this is where we loop right back to foot health.
Right.
The derby is an absolute necessity for many individuals. If you have a wide foot, or maybe a foot with a high instep, meaning the top of your foot arches highly bare, an Oxford will forcefully clamp down on those bones. The closed lacing simply cannot accommodate the volume, but a derby allows you to release the tension on those flaps, giving your foot the necessary space.
It also accommodates the natural biological reality that human feet just swell over the course of an 8-hour workday. I mean, edema is very real.
It is very real. And the derby allows you to subtly adjust the lacing pressure in the afternoon when that swelling occurs, whereas an Oxford remains rigidly fixed.
I want to frame a very specific scenario for our listener here. Let's say they have a critical first-round interview. They know corporate culture is conservative. The traditional advice dictates they wear a black Oxford. But they have incredibly wide feet, and wearing an Oxford causes them sharp, distracting pain within 20 minutes.
Oh, no.
Should they grit their teeth and just wear the Oxford to project the right image? Or is a black derby acceptable?
Under absolutely no circumstances should they grit their teeth and endure the pain.
Really?
Really, a polished, well-maintained black derby is completely acceptable for a formal interview. An interviewer is looking at the cleanliness, the polish, and the overall silhouette of your footwear. They are not inspecting your lacing architecture.
But they will absolutely notice if your posture is compromised or if your answers are clipped because you're internally managing physical pain.
Exactly. Your cognitive focus belongs on the conversation, not your metatarsals. We return to the golden rule. Health outranks fashion. A comfortable candidate is a confident candidate.
That makes total sense.
Yeah.
So the adjustability of a derby solves a volume problem for a wide foot. But when we look at women's professional footwear, the biomechanical challenge shifts entirely.
It really does.
We are no longer just fighting horizontal compression. We're fighting gravity, leverage, and pitch due to the introduction of elevated heels.
The physical expectations placed on women's professional footwear are notoriously demanding. But before discussing elevation, we should establish the grounded staples.
Right. The baseline for women's professional wear seems to revolve around the pump, or what British sources refer to as the court shoe.
Yes. The pump is a closed-toe shoe with a seamless vamp cut low across the top of the foot. It is the most versatile cornerstone of a woman's professional wardrobe, easily transitioning from a desk to a formal presentation.
It's just a classic.
It is. And for those seeking zero elevation, ballet flats and polished loafers offer highly professional silhouettes while keeping the foot entirely grounded in a natural, healthy, anatomical position.
But elevation is where the physics become highly consequential.
Oh, yes.
Let's examine the mechanics of heel shapes and how they impact stability. And let's start with the most culturally prominent one, the stiletto.
The stiletto is defined by a thin, needle-like heel, frequently exceeding 3 or 4 inches in height. And from an orthopedic and safety perspective, this is the most compromised position you can put your body in.
When you look at the physics of it, you are taking a massive percentage of your body weight and concentrating it onto a surface area of perhaps 1/4 of a square inch.
The pounds per square inch of pressure is staggering, but beyond just the tiny base, the steep pitch of a stiletto acts like a slide. It forces your entire body weight violently forward onto the balls of your feet.
Yikes.
Yeah, it crams your toes into the toe box, virtually eliminating any arch support, and it forces your knees and lower back out of natural alignment just to compensate for the shifted center of gravity. Your ankle stabilizers are basically working overtime just to keep you upright.
So if this stiletto represents maximum biomechanical risk, what are the architectural alternatives? What provides professional elevation without destroying the lower back?
The most effective alternative is the block heel. Rather than a needle, a block heel provides a wide, squared-off pillar of support. It radically increases the surface area hitting the ground, offering immense stability and distributing your weight far more evenly.
It's the difference between trying to balance on a tightrope versus standing on a cinder block.
Exactly. Another elegant option is the Kitten heel. This utilizes a slim profile but keeps the height drastically lower, usually between 1.5 inches to 2 inches.
Oh, okay.
It reduces that severe forward pitch of the foot, offering a really modest lift without those punishing skeletal angles.
Our sources also highlight wedges and platforms, which seem to alter the mechanics in a totally different way.
They do. Wedges are exceptional for weight distribution. Instead of isolating impact at the heel and the ball of the foot, a wedge features a continuous, solid sole bridging those 2 points.
So it supports the entire arch of the foot simultaneously.
Yes. Platforms, on the other hand, strategically cheat the geometry of the shoe.
Wait, how so?
Well, a platform adds material thickness directly under the front of the foot. So if you are wearing a shoe with a 4-inch heel in the back, but a 1-inch platform under the toes, the anatomical pitch your foot actually experiences is only 3 inches.
Ah, I see.
It reduces the steepness of the ramp, mitigating a significant amount of strain on the Achilles tendon and the ball of the foot.
I want to push back on a cultural narrative here for a second.
Go for it.
We are constantly fed this visual shorthand in movies and media where the ultimate power shoe for a female executive is the 4-inch stiletto. Like the ruthless CEO always clicks down the marble hallway on needles.
It weighs.
The implication is that stilettos equate to professional dominance. But based on the biomechanics we just discussed, buying into that Hollywood image seems like a major strategic error.
It is a profound strategic error. The media uses the stiletto as a visual metaphor, but in the physical reality of an actual workplace, true professional power is rooted in capability.
Yeah.
You cannot command a room, project authority, or negotiate effectively if you are terrified of rolling your ankle on a carpet transition, or if you're constantly shifting your weight to manage throbbing pain.
So a block heel or a supportive flat isn't a compromise. It is a tactical advantage.
Real power is having a physical foundation so secure that you never even have to think about it. Choosing footwear that allows you to stand your ground, literally and metaphorically, for 8 hours a day is the ultimate power move.
Wow. As we wrap up this deep dive, the overarching theme here is incredibly clear. Building a new professional life quite literally starts from the ground up. Now, we intentionally bypass the deep historical origins of these styles, and the granular medical diagnostics today, we will reserve those for a future deep dive.
Absolutely.
Our focus today was on arming you with a practical, structural understanding of what you were putting on your feet.
Whether you are seeking out a resolvable Goodyear welt on the secondary market to ensure your investment lasts a decade, or choosing the open lacing of a derby to accommodate your foot volume, or selecting a stable block heel to command a room securely, prioritizing the health of your foundation is the very first step to projecting true professional confidence.
You know, there is one lingering thought about that thrift store strategy we discussed earlier.
Oh, what's that?
We talked about how the cork filler inside a welted shoe compresses under heat and pressure to form a perfect custom mold of the wearer's foot.
The custom orthotic effect, yes.
Right. So if that cork has already been compressed and memorized the arch, the weight distribution, and the specific stride of the original owner.
Okay, I see where you're going with this.
What exactly happens when you buy them secondhand? Are you essentially inheriting the physical footprint and walking habits of a total stranger?
That is a great question.
And over time, does the heat and pressure of your own stride eventually overwrite that foundation, forcing the shoe to reshape itself to your anatomy?
It is a fascinating physical legacy to step into, isn't it? It adds an entirely different dimension to the concept of walking a mile in someone else's shoes.
It really does. Something to ponder the next time you're inspecting the welt on a vintage Oxford at a consignment shop. To our listener, as you step out into your interviews, as you navigate your new office environments and embark on this next professional chapter, we are rooting for you. Take control of your foundation, protect your physical health, and step confidently into your future. We will catch you next time on The Deep Dive.